We're going. Good morning and welcome to the Wise Why. I'm joined this morning by Gillan Williams, and brilliantly, because for me it's school holidays, I'm on holiday in my own head and I nearly missed hitting live. Can you believe that? Gillan and I work very closely together and I absolutely adore him. Partly the reason we nearly didn't go live was because we were chatting. So as usual, the Wise Why is not about me. It is about my wonderful guest. And this is the last one until September. So, Gillan, after you had a lovely cough there, introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, so I'm Gillan. I am the director of Clarity Video. So it's a video production company based in Oxfordshire, just outside of Wallingford. And I met Kirsty, I think it was through networking. Oh, it was at one of Sandra's events, the business hub. No, not hub. What was it called?
The business buzz or the business spa?
Business spa. That's the one.
There you go.
Yeah, so we've known each other for some months, and video content is what I do.
So we've talked extensively, and we know that where we connect is about being on brand, being on message. We look at the whole holistic approach of marketing because it's not just your video. There's a lot more to it. And I'd like you to expand a little bit, if that's okay, to the audience about why you come at video the same way as I do.
In the same way as you do, expand a bit more on that.
So you're looking at it from a holistic point. You're not just putting out a pretty video. You are out there and on brand, on message.
Yeah, so to give you a bit of a background, I come from marketing and brand management. I did that for quite some years, and also film production and producing. So I have that background, and especially the work that I did with marketing and brand management, I learned how important it is to understand who your audience is. Your content isn't for you, it's for your audience. And so I've brought that to what I do with Clarity, and the way that I approach any filmmaking is who's watching it and what story you're trying to tell them. And that's absolutely key for engagement. And that goes across entertainment to marketing content to corporate content. And a lot of us know telling stories is important. That's how we connect. I mean, that's what separates us from the animals. We tell stories. If there was Armageddon happens tomorrow, and then those survivors will gather around the campfire and we'll tell our story. So if everything goes away, the stories remain. So that's pretty obvious. I think most people know that. But I think one of the things people forget about is what story are you telling to your audience, and how does your audience want to receive that message? And that's really important, because you can be trying to say the same thing, but if you're doing it in an inappropriate or maybe not optimized way, then your message just isn't going to hit. It's not going to connect with your audience as well as it could. So I think that's what you mean, is it's understanding the brand, but also very much so understanding the audience and telling them the right story, not just your story.
And I love that. I love the fact that you've picked up on storytelling straight away, because the one thing we know from our childhood, from the very first time, even when we're in the womb, we're hearing stories, because we're in the womb and we're hearing other mothers, other parents talking about the stories of how their journey has been. So storytelling is something, it's a bit like the heartbeat. It's about like your breath. It's one of those things that are absolutely rooted right the way through to our core. And so many people forget about how important stories are, which brings me on to you telling me a story. How did you get to Oxfordshire from Wales?
Yeah, so grew up in Wales, from a rural community in Pembrokeshire. And my he worked in farming, so it was very much from that background. And I tried that field, and it just didn't work for me. I always wanted to be in media, and I started in the National Theatre Wales. So I was a lighting technician there, and really wanted to get into film. And I tried doing basically what I do now there, and there just wasn't a market for it. So made movies with some friends. Again, there's no film industry down where we were, so that didn't really go anywhere. Went to uni, hoping to make some connections, and realized I was just sort of at a bit of a dead end. So I ended up going into publishing, and worked for an award-winning magazine called Blown, and ended up then working through the ranks of that. And that was really because I was desperate to just get somewhere. And I think being tenacious is important. It's key for being successful in this field. And when I started working for Blown magazine, I was the intern, and I just went to every meeting. It didn't matter what it was, every meeting. And if a task needed doing, I'd say I could do it. And at that time, I had the energy to do it. They wanted a website. I said, oh, I could do that. And they said, it was just a one page. I was like, yeah, no problem at all. I can get that done in 2 days. I had no idea how to make a website. So I spent the first 24 hours learning how to do it, and the next 24 hours making it, and then delivered it, and they were happy with it. I was in Cornwall on holiday with some friends, and I found out there was a meeting, it's more of a general meeting for the magazine. So I jumped on the motorcycle, rode back to Wales, back to Carmarthen, sat in the meeting in my leathers, and at the end of the meeting, jumped back on the bike and went back to Cornwall. So that was a sort of dedication that I gave it, and I quickly worked through the ranks and ended up as one of the editors, and then worked for the publishing company. It was a strange sort of situation where I was one of the editors and also publishing the magazine I was working for, and then there were others too. And I never really wanted to go into publishing, but it's the avenue that I took because it was the door that was open to me. And then that worked for a while. 2008 came along. The financial crisis just gutted the advertising revenue out of publishing, and it sort of put a death knell to what was already pretty much a failing industry, really. So I pivoted and moved into marketing. So I did that for a while, and met my partner, Kat, whilst I was doing that. And whilst we loved the beaches and this more laid back lifestyle, and certainly the beauty of Pembrokeshire, there's not a whole lot of opportunity, and we wanted more for ourselves and also for our kids. And so, and Kat was working as a store manager, and I was working in marketing in tourism, and we realized we'd sort of hit glass ceilings. There was no further for us to go in terms of our career where we lived, and we were in our 30s, and we just weren't happy with that. So we decided to start applying for jobs. Kat applied for work in the pharmaceutical industry, and I was applying for work in marketing. And we decided wherever we're going to end up, whoever gets the first job, the big job, then we both move there and we'll make it work. And Kat got a job in Oxfordshire first, and she was commuting up here and working midweek, and I was looking after the kids. And then I happened to get a job in Oxford as well. So it all worked out really well. And that's how we ended up moving here about 6 years ago.
I love that. I love the fact that you. So I believe that you should, and I've spoken about this before. I love the idea of following the white rabbit down the rabbit hole, jumping into it, and then just free falling, and then landing somewhere. So some people call them quantum leaps, but I just call it my Alice moments. And it sounds like you've had quite a few of those with, is it Kath?
Kat, yeah.
Kat.
Yeah.
So with Kat, you've had quite a few of those, and you've pivoted, and it's really inspirational how many times you have pivoted, because I remember you talking to me about working and making films out of really basic film, and I'd like you to expand a bit more about that, because some of the tricks that you do on video are really interesting, and you're doing it with mirrors. So I'd like you to expand a bit more about how sometimes you don't need the highest amount of tech and how you started doing that.
Well, yeah. So in terms of jumping, I'll just talk about that one first. The direction you want to take towards your goals feels intuitively, you feel like you want to take a straight line to it. And I can't take credit for this thought. It's actually by Matty Hoppier, who's a fantastic YouTuber, if you ever want to look him up. But your goal, rather than it being a single point in space and you're moving in a straight line to it, it's more of a circle around you, and any step in any direction with that goal in mind is a step in the right direction. It's getting closer to that boundary, that line, and you'll move around in odd directions, but eventually work your way to that goal. So in terms of wanting to get into film, which is what I've always wanted to do, it wasn't working in Wales, but publishing did work. So I went in that direction, and that taught me a lot about PR. Then I ended up working in marketing. That taught me about marketing and then brand management. So I learned a lot about audiences. And then when I came to Oxfordshire, I actually produced my first feature film. And all those skills I learned along the way as my path meandered towards my goal became incredibly useful in producing the film. And the last job that I had at Oxford Risk, the last employed job I had before going independent, that was in the finance industry, which was hugely helpful in terms of managing the finance and running the finance of a feature film. So those rabbit holes are the path, as long as you have in mind the goal that you want to get to and are comfortable being flexible about how you get there. And then in terms of the filmmaking approach, we were in rural Wales and spent a lot of time in Ceredigion. Cardiganshire, and I mean, there's nothing there. There's beautiful beaches and sheep and fields, and that's about all you got. And we were young, and we wanted to make films, so we got an old. It wasn't a cine cam; it was a handy cam, kind of like the one I've got up here. You know, just one of those little handy cams, and we just started filming because we wanted to do that. And then we made friends with the guys who ran a local media centre in Cardigan Town, and managed to convince them to let us use their gear for free. So we went and shot our feature film, and we never expected to distribute it. It hasn't been distributed. It's called Straight to Video Cop 4, because it was very tongue in cheek. And there's no cops in it. It didn't go to video, and there's no 1, 2, and 3. It was just for the fun of it. But we learned how to we learned filmmaking from a very grassroots DIY approach, and I've maintained that. When in many industries, I suppose, you feel like to be successful in it and to produce good content or produce good results, you have to have the latest equipment, you have to have the latest innovations and be cutting edge and leading edge. But actually being goal focused and then looking at the materials you have with you and being creative, you can often get fantastic results with much less. And I think I've taken that with me. And I think the mirror thing you were talking about is if you look on the Clarity Video Instagram, there's a couple of reels on there of beauty products, and it looks like a awesome sort of video effect. It's actually a screen at an angle with a mirror, and the product sits on it, and it's as simple as that. And to be honest with you, a lot of filmmaking is as simple as that. It seems like there's a lot of the magic isn't in having all the latest tech. The magic is in your creative solutions. I think that's
I absolutely love it. So what was there a pivotal, talk about pivots, was there a point in your life where because I seem to remember you talking about being on the motorbike, was there a point in your life that you just that happened that made you go, this is what I want to do? Was there a moment?
Yes, yeah, well, a pretty literally impactful moment. So I was at Pinewood Studios at a networking event there, and as I left the studios, was in a motorcycle accident. There was another car involved, and it literally put me on my back. So broke both my arms and fractured my back, and I was knocked out until the ambulance arrived. On the report, they said that I was non-responsive, but I do remember hearing them arrive. And I mean, frankly, it basically nearly killed me. And the helmet that I was wearing, actually, got that. So this is the helmet that I was wearing, and you can see the damage on there. And I keep this around because it's kind of a metaphor that this saved my life upon impact, but the strap was choking me. I got the key still attached there, but this was choking me. Unfortunately, the passenger in the car, she was a nurse and realized what was happening. So the helmet both saved my life and was ending it. So yeah, that accident literally put me on my back and put me right to the brink. And long story cut short, 12-hour surgery to piece my arms back together, and years of recovery. But during that process, I was not satisfied with my life at that time. I was working in brand management, and it wasn't what I wanted to do. It wasn't a bad job per se. It just wasn't what I was passionate about. I wanted to make film, and I was doing that on the side. And so I decided to take the opportunity of having this break that figuratively and literally gave me, and to go for it for a while. And I left the company I was working for, and had enough money to go for it for a little while. And was doing that, and so we made the feature film Hosts, and that was distributed in 2020. We hit it lucky because we finished filming just at the beginning of lockdown, so we were able to edit. No, we finished filming in the January before lockdown, and we just finished the edit as lockdown happened in the Easter, and we were able to distribute very quickly because all the productions stopped. So a lot of the distribution companies were expecting films to be available. They weren't. So it was a fantastic opportunity for this indie film to get sold and get international distribution. That was great. Then the pandemic effect hit me, and it still remains incredibly hard to get a feature film made now. I won't go into the details of that. It's a difficult environment. And so I decided, well, I don't want to go back to full-time employment for somebody else. And I looked at the skill set that I have: marketing, brand management, producing, and production skills in terms of actually filming. And I thought, well, why don't I just combine these together to turn this into Clarity Video, which I did in January of this year. And it's gone quite well. And I think I'm very lucky because the pandemic really, it really demonstrated the value of video to business. And so I happened to hit the market with the right skill set at the right time. And that is luck, because I tell you, I've tried a lot of businesses in my time. I've started a skincare company, an action sports brand, apparel, lots of different things. And none of them ever really hit the market at the right time. And this one did. And I think that's something that maybe there's some of you out there who are listening who are struggling at the moment. Well, you're not failing. If you're still in the fight, you're not a loser. That's the way I say it. And if this venture doesn't work, what you've done is you've learned, you've spent time studying really the way that this does and doesn't work, and you take those skills onto the next. So take it from me, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and this time it's happened to work out very well, but this is not an overnight success. This has taken decades to get here.
I love you for sharing that, because not many people know that I had a company that I set up and closed quite quickly, because that was it. Just before I met Dennis, I was floundering. So I'd been that active. I was self-employed, so I'd run myself, but I wanted more, and I couldn't work out what to do with my life. And I set up, and I'm going to say it, Promote IT, but it's Promote It. Promote It.
Right.
Promo hyphen. So promote, anyway, promote hyphen, no E on the end, IT. And the idea, if you put that together, you'll see what I'm saying. The idea was to supply intelligent promotional staff to the IT industry. And I'm going to say that I don't mean that against any promotional staff out there, but when you come to demonstrating in a big arena technology, you need to be confident and comfortable to stand there and talk the talk. And if you've got to talk about WDR or I don't know, infrareds and why the infrared is important, and oh gosh, reflective mirrors, but in a technical way. So I don't know, the front side bus of a computer or a CPU, and explain what it is in layman's terms. So it was just adding, instead of putting out girls that were being forced at the time to be walking around in high heels and shorts. Yes, I'm calling you all out, everybody, but putting those promo staff in high heels at an event, 6-inch heels, and really high cut shorts angered me, because that's not what most of the people who worked in the promotion industry at that time were actors, performers, and they were intelligent, and they didn't need to be, I don't really know what the word is, and I don't want to go on a political rant again, but we didn't need to be treated as if we were cannon fodder. Sure. And so I went to set that up, and I realized I didn't have the business acumen. It came to pricing, it came to structure, and I just went, I don't have it. And so that was my first company that was launched, branded, registered, and closed 3 months later, because I didn't have the business acumen. So I'm really pleased that you've shared that you don't just set up a business. No. You go off, and all the way that we've done, I think back to every single thing that I've done in my life has got me to the point where I am now running a business, and like you, I've pulled all my strengths together. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
I don't know whether it's a typically British thing, and maybe it's not the case now, but I know a while ago that there was a sense that if you try to set up a business and you fail, well, then you're a failure, and this isn't for you. And I was looking at like the Y Combinator, and the way things work in Silicon Valley, and you're not taken seriously when you're pitching in your business until you're on your third project, your third business, because they know that it takes that long, and there's those many lessons that you have to learn along the way before you're going to be an effective, business leader. That's not to say that some people are very lucky and some people are very good and have the skills and they can do it sooner than that. But in my experience personally, certainly, and also I think generally for most people, it takes a few tries. Nobody's an expert at anything the first time they try it. And I think that there's a pressure to feel like if you're not successful off the bat, then you're doing the wrong thing. And I guess that comes down to imposter syndrome and the pressures you put on yourself as much as anybody else. But yeah, it's to be encouraged. If you're getting it wrong, at least you're learning.
Yeah. So who's helped you? I mean, you talked about Kat, but who else has helped you along the way to keep you driving? Because, you know, like me, you've pivoted everywhere. And that's, I mean, that's why we get on, because we will try things and I don't know if I'm brave, but I would just, I'm up for trying it. And if it goes wrong, it doesn't matter. It's what's the worst thing that can happen. But who's inspired or helped you along the way?
Several people. And one of the motivators was being from a rural community. You end up working in jobs that the kind of jobs I did, and milking cows. I did that for a while, and that's really not what I wanted to do. And having done that and knowing, well, if this doesn't work, I might end up being, a herdsman or whatever, whatever it might be. That's a motivator, because that's really not the life I wanted to have. But you do what you can to survive. So there's that motivator. In terms of who's helped me along the way, lots of people. Rick Bauer was quite key. He was the editor of Blown magazine, so I knew him via the university, because I went to university in Wales, and he was lecturing in the art college next door. And so I sort of knew, I'd known him around and about for a while, and he really helped. He made it difficult to get the internship, but when I got that, he was very encouraging. And then I think that along the way, you pick up mentors, and often you don't realize it, and they might not even realize it at the time, but you look back and you see that they were very supportive. When I first got into marketing, there was a guy called Tim Brace who owned the company FBM Holidays. He's since moved on now, but he was really hard to work for. But that every marketer who'd worked for him before had gone on to do great jobs and had really good careers, because he pushed you very hard, and he was very happy for you to make mistakes, but you had to be pushing. He couldn't accept you being complacent, and not that often was, but there was always this sense of pushing you to do something and pushing you to make mistakes. If you made a mistake, well, that's fine. You've learned that doesn't work. What's next? What are you doing next? And there was always that pressure. And that was a hugely beneficial lesson. At the time, I found it difficult, but looking back, I learned a lot from him. And yeah, my mind goes blank when I'm thinking like this, but I think that's sort of what happens, is you look back on these lessons you get, and often it's not something that you intentionally went to and said, I need to learn this from you. It just arrives because circumstance, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it's not one person. I think it's several people along the way. I've
had quite a few, and it's really interesting, because I think life throws people at you that you need at that time. I always joke about relationships, but obviously I'm happily married. But the person that you go out with, there's a mirroring going on. They've got something that you need to learn, and until you find the person that you want to settle with. And I know that sounds a bit trite, but there's more complexities behind all of that. But I think that's the same with bosses and leaders. If I think back to the person, Mike Evans, who took a chance on me, and he really did, Mike. He took a chance on me to take me, when I decided to close Promote IT, Promoted, there we go, I've said it. When I decided to close that, Mike also contacted about the right time, and he took a huge chance, and he took me into a full-time role, and I took a £20,000 pay cut to take that role. So because as a freelancer, I was earning a fortune, but there's no way he could afford it. And then he nurtured and he shared and he taught me, and I hope Mike watches this, he taught me how to write a report. Now, that report is still the foundation of what I write for my clients today, because it was a client report. And then I moved into going to D-Link, and Luigi grabbed me and taught me about marketing. And then Rod Slater from Exertis gave me a really hard time, and so did Luke Steele, about what customer service was from that point of view, from client relationships, rather than working in a department store, which I had when I worked for Estee Lauder. And I think about the people that have shaped me. Simon Shawley, who taught me the power of the word yet. And then Joy Foster, who then reiterated the power of the word yet. And I just sit there and think,
expand on that. That's interesting. What do you mean by the power? Yet.
So Simon Shawley used to always say, you haven't done it yet. And I'd forgotten about this. And then I went and joined the Tech Pixies, and I went on to the Tech Pixies course and learned about social media. And Joy kept talking about this word thing. You haven't done it yet. You haven't got there yet. You're not successful yet. And so you add the word yet on the end. It's incredibly positive. I'm stressed, but I don't know how to do this yet. And it gives you this amazing, powerful thing. Then I went and met Simon at an event, and he kept talking to me about yet. And I went, oh my goodness, you're the first person who introduced me to the power of yet. And I know there's some people here. Oh, Luke, love it. Love it. So Luke, just going to expand on this. So when I met Luke, he was really stressed. He was like, people are not responding. We're getting this silence. I need someone who will do something. And I think Luke will, Timmy's just said, I think he'll be one of the people that actually says, I'll get the job done. And that's what I did for Luke, because I got the job done. So yeah, it's quite nice to talk about the people who have helped and inspired him, who are still part of my life today. So thank you for expanding on that. I really enjoyed it. So what's your next big thing that you're going to go and do?
Well, I'm in the process of it now. So Clarity, I want that to grow into a big company. It initially started as just a way of sort of shoring up the finance revenue streams from the feature film work, but it's growing a lot, and I'm really enjoying the work. It's because I'm doing the production, and when I'm producing, despite the name of the role, you're not doing the production work here. It's all sort of finance, and it's large administration and operations management. So I want to build Clarity up and make that a bigger company. I want to start employing people. And with the producing, I have 3 feature films that I'm working on at the moment. So Locker 42, When the Devil Comes, and Stray. And they're all in development at the moment. One of them, When the Devil Comes, is close to being able to be in pre-production. So I want to release those. And then after that, well, I have lofty ambitions. There's a sort of a charity angle that I want to take, and there's somebody that I know, and I know the time is short, but I feel like this is an important point to make. Charity is important to me. During lockdown, myself and a friend of mine, James Keenan, we started a food bank in Chertsey in South Runnymede, because there was a need for it, and there was a lot of opposition against that. The local council didn't want it, because they didn't want it to be known that this was necessary, but it was. So we ran that for a while, and giving back to community and charity is hugely important to me. And one of the things I want to do is essentially in the future set up a logistics company that specializes in delivering logistics to developing nations, but also running that as part of a charity where you have impact investments. So it's sort of a conceptual stage at the moment, but essentially what I want is if there's a disaster, often what happens is money goes in, and the money that's provided in aid, only 20% of that actually ends up helping the actual situation, or it gets absorbed into other places. And what I'd like to do is have a logistics company so we can get whatever's needed to that location, but then also help set up whatever systems have been taken out, and be like roads or transportation, utilities, whatever it is, help reestablish that with investors' money. And then that is created in partnership with the people of the disaster area. And then they have local ownership of it. And then as that then builds, as it will, the investment then can be repaid. So the investors make their money back. They've had their impact investing, sort of done. So they feel good about that. They get their return. And if they don't, well, they donated to charity, so that's okay. But then the ownership remains with the people in the area, and that's really important. So I want to be able to enable that, and that's my end goal. That's where I really want to head to. But that's something that is way out of my grasp at the moment, and that's my retirement goal. I don't want to stop working. I think I just want to start working with other people. So I'm rolling over. I realise.
No. That's what I was going to say. You never know, because this is going to go. This is live on YouTube. This is going to go onto Anchor, and you never know. Somebody might just listen to this. So, and that's why I love doing these interviews, because you never know. And right now, you're throwing it out to the cosmos. So I'm going to support that 100% and hold it tight. So I really will. On that one, as I hold that one tight and keep it close to me, you get to ask me a question. And as you know me, this is going to be really difficult.
Let me think.
Actually, before we go to that, we haven't talked about the dyslexia. We were going to talk about that because we're both dyslexic.
Well, yeah, okay. Let's turn to a question about that. Yes,
we'll go over a bit over.
So I'm dyslexic and dyspraxic apparently. and I don't see it as a disability whatsoever. You know, I'm an intelligent person. I mean, I've taken IQ tests and they come back, you know, positive, good results. So I have that confidence. I just don't see the world. I don't think in the same way as most people. I think more creatively than a lot. And that is an advantage. Sometimes it's difficult. So in terms of systems administration, I often struggle with that. But then you just get people in to help you with that. And I guess my question to you is, because I believe that's the same case for you, like, how do you overcome those challenges?
So I think I'm going to put a shout out to Chayla right now. Ocho Works. I did everything I could to get my website where I wanted it to go, but I couldn't. The dyslexic brain was firing on too many cylinders, and I couldn't get it to where I wanted it to be, because sometimes with the dyslexia, dyspraxia, it can be too big, and I need to hone it down, and I can hone it down brilliantly. If you were to sit there and tell me what you needed to do, I can hone that for you, the client, and not even think twice about it. Doing it for myself was impossible. So it's the way that I learn, and Chayla got it. So I'm quite vocal when I'm learning, and it sounds like I'm actually attacking myself, and I'm not. I'm really not giving myself an inner dialogue and upset with myself. I'm telling myself steps. So I vocalize the steps that I need to do, because that's how I learn to get me to where I want to go. And Chayla thought I was having a massive go at myself. And eventually I said, no, this is just how I learn. I have to vocalize. That's not a mistake. That's an error. What do I need to do it correctly? Okay, you silly person, let's do it this way. So it sounds horrendous, I guess, if someone's listening to it.
Right.
But for me, I'm not listening to it. I'm doing like a jigsaw step. So I either learn doing the steps and getting them wrong and then correcting it, or I am now brave enough to say, I cannot do this. And where I fail a little bit is I read words. I don't read words. I read shapes. And so I can't tell you the difference between out and hour, form and from, sales and sales and sales. So I can't see it. And so I'm completely blind. So I need somebody to proofread that. So I now outsource some of the work that I do. And I have a whole group of network like Chris Parry who will say, you've put that out and you've done it wrong. And I'm really grateful and thankful for the people that pick up the phone and say, you got it wrong, because I don't take it personally. And some people who don't know me will go, I don't want to be funny, but you've done. And I'm like, that's fine. Please tell me, because I can't see it. I am totally word blind.
Right.
What about you?
You put things in place to manage for that. And I think not just running a business in life, I think there's we all have a certain, what's the best way to describe it? I think of it like weighing scales, except that there's several scales. You know, it's rather than just two scales. It's like a ring of them, and we all have a certain amount of ability, and you weigh that out onto the scales, and so they balance in different ways. But as long as you understand, well, I'm more skilled in this area, but then lacking in this, if you put something in place to make up for that, then you make up your shortfalls, and then you can be more successful. And I think being open to what your weaknesses are and not putting yourself under the pressure to be excellent at everything, because that's impossible, and you're chasing really an unattainable goal. So it sounds like you've done that well.
Let's have a quick look at the questions. We did get very busy. Alexa said timing is important. Lindsay Ion has said, great TED talk by Carol Dweck on the power of growth mindset. Haley, I love hearing that you took your skills and made a business for yourself. You seem really happy, Gillan. Jill, I love you. I love everyone on this, actually. The journey is the goal. What makes you unique? And yeah, it's just really, do you know what? Thank you, everybody, for all your support over the last nearly a year. Thank you, Gillan, for joining me this morning. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love the fact I got to finish the summer with you. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor. And I mean, I love the series. I've been listening to this for a while. So very pleased to be able to be on it and to be on the last one.
Awesome.